Chapter 1. Childhood Conditioning. The spell is cast. We aren't born speciesist. We don't come into the world believing that some animals are friends, some are food, and some are entertainment. Those categories are taught to us gently at first, and then reinforced until they seem like common sense. From the moment we're children, animals are everywhere in our culture. They fill our storybooks, we sing their names in nursery rhymes, they star in our cartoons. We learn to sing about old MacDonald's farm with happy cows and cheerful hens, but we never learn what happens inside the slaughterhouse or on the transport truck. The stories stop before the ending because the real ending would break the spell. As toddlers, we play with toy farms, where every animal has a role. Cows give milk, hens lay eggs, sheep provide wool. Wild animals, on the other hand, are exotic characters. Maybe they exist in jungles or in the zoo. Pets, they're family members. These categories are set long before we ever ask the question, why? Even school reinforces this lesson. Children's drawings of farms almost never show cages or trucks or blood, only smiling animals with their families in their family groups. Field trips to petting zoos and dairy farms present exploitation as fun and educational. Children are allowed to see just enough to accept the use of animals, but never enough to question it. Sometimes the lesson is even more direct. In the United States, youth programs like 4-H encourage children to raise animals, bond with them, and care for them, only to sell them at auction for slaughter. For some children, it is a moment of trauma. For others, it becomes a test of loyalty, teaching them that suppressing empathy is a virtue. Either way, the lesson is clear. Animals are not here for themselves, but they're here for us. And this cycle is global. In many countries, children are introduced to exploitation through celebration. Lamb at Easter, turkey at Christmas, pigs at New Year. What begins as a family tradition becomes a moral blind spot. And parents pass on not just food, but the spell itself. They share the same songs, the same stories, the same silences that they once learned as children. Even the most innocent children's movies send the same message. We cry when Bambi's mother is killed. We cheer when Dumbo is freed. We root for the fox and the hound's friendship against all odds. In these stories, the villains are the humans who exploit animals. And yet when the film ends, children are handed a burger or a glass of milk without anyone naming the contradiction. This is how cultural prejudice is passed down, not by argument, but by repetition, by songs and toys and stories and clothing that all on the face of them seem harmless, but carry the weight of an entire worldview. Speciesism. It's not only not natural, it's taught. It's passed from parent to child like a lullaby, so softly we hardly even notice it happening. Chapter 2. Language and the absent referent. Once the categories are in place, language does the rest of the work. Language shapes how we see the world. It can reveal truth, or it can conceal it. And when it comes to the animals, it almost always conceals. Cows don't remain cows, they become beef. Pigs don't remain pigs, they become pork. Chickens become poultry, calves become veal, even the word livestock, turning living beings into units of production. At the same time, language removes identity. A calf becomes it instead of he or she. Somebody is reduced to something. This is what Carol J. Adams called the absent referent, the being who vanishes behind the product. It's why someone can eat a burger without imagining the cow, or wear leather without picturing the skin of whom it was taken from. Euphemisms keep the violence hidden. Humane slaughter, free range, sustainable harvest. Even the industry itself is fluent in this concealment. Fish discarded as waste become bycatch. Male calves taken away from their mothers are deemed surplus. Hens who can no longer lay enough eggs are called spent. Same with cows who can no longer produce enough milk. Words that strip away lives and blame the victims and leave only categories of use. This distortion seeps into everyday speech. We say bacon and eggs, not the bodies of pigs and chickens. We say chicken nuggets, not dead birds in batter. We say burger, not ground up cow or pig. Language does not describe exploitation. It sanitizes it until violence sounds normal. And when vegans speak plainly, when we say he or she instead of it, when we refuse to swap pigs for pork, the absent referent reappears. We bring them back to life. And that is when people become defensive, even hostile, because the moment the victim is named, the violence can no longer be denied. Chapter 3. Denial and Defense Mechanisms. Most people already agree with the values behind veganism. If you ask them whether they oppose cruelty, whether they love animals, or whether unnecessary suffering is wrong, almost everyone says yes to these questions. And yet most continue to eat, wear and use other animals every single day. This creates a tension between what people believe and what they do. Psychologists call it cognitive dissonance. When actions clash with values, the mind looks for ways to reduce that discomfort. For some, the solution is denial. Don't tell me. I don't want to know. I can't see it. I can't look at that. By looking away, the conflict disappears. For others, it's rationalization. And here, the stories are endless. Animals were put here by God for us. Other animals eat meat, so why can't we? Plants feel pain. We've been doing it for X amount of time. We need meat in our diet. Or we have the softer versions, where I only eat a little animal products, or at least I buy it from the free-range farm. Again, these are not arguments. They are strategies of comfort. Psychologists call one of them moral licensing, the idea that buying a humane product grants permission to continue exploitation. Different words, same purpose, to excuse what they already want to keep doing. Humour is another defence. Bacon though. I love animals, they taste great. Jokes that turn violence into something light, because it is easier to laugh than it is to face the contradiction. And often it's projection. Instead of admitting their own unease, they aim it at us instead. You're too judgmental. You're too extreme. You're forcing it. You make me feel guilty. And even silence can trigger it. Simply saying I'm vegan forces people to remember the absent referent, the animal behind the product. Suddenly, their comfort is shaken and the defences activate. That's why jokes, mockery and hostility towards vegans are oh so common. They're not random, they are defence mechanisms. They are strategies to protect an identity built on practices that deep down people struggle to justify. This is why conversations about veganism feel so charged often. The problem isn't a lack of information. Most people already know that animals are at least harmed. The problem is that the discomfort is realising what that means for their own choices, and instead of facing that discomfort, most will do almost anything they can to avoid it. Chapter 4. The Animal Lover Illusion. Another common defence sounds softer, even noble. I'm an animal lover. At first, it feels like a statement of compassion, but in a world where almost everybody uses other animals daily, it's also used as a shield, a way of saying, I can't be part of the problem because I love them. And yes, people really do love animals. Some will risk their lives to rescue a dog from a frozen lake. They will cry when a horse breaks their leg, or donate to save endangered species. Their love can certainly be deep and genuine. But love does not erase exploitation. The same person who would run into traffic to save a dog may go home to eat a pig. The same parent who looks after their family cat may serve a chicken's body for dinner for the rest of the family. The same animal lover who strokes a cow at a petting zoo may still drink the milk taken from other calves. For many, there is no sense of contradiction. In fact, the love becomes part of the justification. I love animals, so of course I would never support cruelty, as though kindness in one context cancels out violence in another. And compassion itself is selective. Millions mourned Cecil the lion when he was killed by a trophy hunter, or Harambe the gorilla when he was killed in a zoo. Yet those same mourners may have eaten a cow that day without a second thought. Love for animals is more often love for certain animals. It's speciesism. Animal welfare organisations often play into this too, using slogans like "for the animals we love" to attract support without challenging use itself. Even some vegans appeal to animal lovers in the hope of finding some consistency. But exploitation doesn't end by appealing to love. It ends by demanding justice. Because we don't need to love other animals in order to respect them. We don't love our neighbours in order to recognise their right to exist. We respect them because they are individuals with lives and experiences of their own. You can love someone and still betray them. It happens every day. Which is why the animal lover identity may feel comforting, but it is irrelevant. Love without justice is just another way of keeping the system intact. Chapter 5. Cruelty versus use. When the public sees undercover footage of factory farms or slaughterhouses, the response is almost always the same. That's cruel. That's terrible. We should change that. Cruelty is easy to condemn. It looks like beating, neglect, or torment. And because almost everyone rejects cruelty, welfare campaigns frame their messages around it. End cruelty, reduce suffering, ban abuse. But cruelty is not the problem. It's a symptom. Use itself is the problem. If we bred and killed animals with no cages, no crowding, no overt violence, it would still always be wrong. Because the fundamental violation is not the pain inflicted, not the treatment, but the right to their lives being taken away. This is why phrases like humane slaughter, cage-free eggs, grass-fed beef, or even RSPCA-approved farming are all contradictions. They disguise exploitation in comforting language, but there is no right way to exploit. There is no kind way to kill someone who wanted to live. History makes this clear. Abolitionists against human slavery didn't campaign for softer whips or bigger cages. They demanded an end to the institution itself. The same principle applies here. And history gives us another lesson. The first animal welfare law in Britain, passed in 1822, was meant to protect cattle from mistreatment, yet slaughterhouses expanded massively afterwards, just as child labour protections often served to entrench the practice. Welfare reforms for animals have only made exploitation appear more acceptable. 200 years of animal welfare laws have not reduced exploitation at all. In fact, we are using and killing more animals today than at any point in human history. Every time the system is cleaned up, it only reassures the public that the system itself is still acceptable. This is why focusing on cruelty alone is a trap. It shifts the debate to treatment instead of use. It makes people ask, how should we use the animals, instead of, should we be using them at all? Cruelty distracts, rights clarify, and the right at stake is simple. The right not to be treated as property, the right not to be used. Until that right is respected, no label, no certification, no standard of treatment will ever make exploitation just. Chapter 6. Breaking the Spell. From childhood songs to everyday language, from cultural defences to welfare illusions, we are conditioned to see exploitation as normal. The spell is powerful, but it is not unbreakable, because once we name what is hidden, the illusion begins to collapse. Once we see that beef was a cow, that pork was a pig, and that humane slaughter is an oxymoron, the absent referent returns, the victim reappears, and when they reappear, everything changes. That is why veganism is not a lifestyle or a diet, but a moral stance. It is the decision to reject the categories we were given, the excuses that we were taught, and the lies that we were sold. It is the refusal to keep this spell alive. And the truth is, most people already share the values that veganism represents. They already believe exploitation to be wrong. They already believe other animals are more than just objects. They already cheer when the villain in the story is the human who exploits. Veganism is simply living in line with those values, without the exceptions. Breaking the spell does not require perfection. It requires consistency. It requires the courage to face discomfort, to name the victim and choose respect over betrayal. And once we do this, the world itself begins to shift. Every act of refusal is also an act of creation. Every time we reject exploitation, we make space for justice. Every time we live vegan, we bring the world closer to what it could be. A world where no one is treated as property and every life is respected for what is their own. This is not just resistance, it is a vision of sanctuaries instead of slaughterhouses, forests regrown instead of cleared, oceans alive instead of emptied, a world where peace is not a children's story, but a lived reality we all share. The conditioning that we inherit is strong, but justice is stronger. The spell that was cast by culture, but it can be broken by conscience, and it begins with a choice to see clearly, to act consistently, and to live as though peace and liberation are possible for all of us. Because in the end, there is no right way to do the wrong thing. There is only justice, or the lack of it.
The spell of speciesism cannot be undone with the same words that once cast it. This prejudice won't be eradicated using the same arbitrary lines that cemented it. Something has to change. We have to change.